The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone. This is the Delta EE team here speaking. This is Arthur. Thanks for joining the webinar. Thanks for being early. It's not the case for everyone, but we appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. In today's webinar, we'll talk about the state of the connector market as described. We will allow you to ask questions if you want. So if you even want to start asking questions or ask questions during the webinar, feel free to, and we'll take some time to answer the questions as much as we can. The webinar will be, as usual, for those who know us, recorded. We can share the slides with you afterwards if you want. We're also very happy to exchange views about the market at the end or later. So, yeah, as I said, feel free to get in touch to ask questions during or after the webinar. We are very happy to engage. We will start in about 5-6 minutes to allow everyone else to join. We have about 260 people registered for today's webinar, so quite a bit of interest, I guess, which is great. But yeah, let's wait a few more minutes to wait for them, and then we will start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. This is Arthur from Delta EE. Today, we are going to discuss the state of the European connector market, and we're very excited to share the result of our studies with you. We're still waiting for a few people to join the software. We have about 260 people registered for today's webinar, which is great to see that much excitement for the topic. Just so that you know, the webinar is recorded. The video will be made available on YouTube. So if you want to share it with your colleagues, share it on digital platforms, you can do that. We can make the slides available to you as well afterwards if you want to. And if you want to discuss this topic or similar topics with us, we are very happy to get in touch with you. So feel free to let us know. You will see on the software, you have a box for questions, so feel free to as well share questions, comments, or anything you want to add to the discussion. This is quite interactive if you have been here before, so do not hesitate to do this. And I think we can get started. Right now, the webinar will be around 40-45 minutes long. We will allow sometimes to do a Q&A towards the end, but if we feel there's an interesting question in between, we will also talk through it at that time. So let's get started. So I'm joined by my colleagues Matti and Evita in Edinburgh. Hi Matti, hi Evita.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
And myself, Arthur, here. I'm based in Paris, so that's quite an international way of sharing information here. You will see also on the right side of the slide other members of the team. The Connectome topic has been something we've been looking at for a while, and the team has expanded gradually as well. It's actually the fifth year in a row we do this, and I see a few people on the software that have been attending almost every state of the market webinar every year. But for new ones joining the webinar, I guess it's a great way to understand how to think about the market, how the players are moving around, where we are at, a bit of the history of the market sometimes as well, so it's great. We started doing this research over 10 years ago, actually, in Delta, and I guess at the time, less than 50,000 customers even had smart home or connected home equipped, and now we are talking about millions of customers, new customers every year. So this is quite an exciting market, and we're really keen to share the findings of our ongoing research in this space. To give you a bit of background for those who don't know us at Delta, we are a specialized research and consulting company. Our headquarters are in Edinburgh in Scotland. We have an office in Cambridge. We just opened an office here in Paris, and we're quite present all over Europe. The topics we cover are shown on the slide here. I won't go into this in detail, but it shows you that we have a deep expertise in all the topics related to new energy. And the team here on the webinar focuses more on the right-hand side, the digital energy, which looks at the connected home, but also how to engage digitally with customers, particularly for service companies linked with energy and heating. We provide two types of work mostly, one being subscription research services, where you subscribe to one of these topics, you get a lot of data, a lot of reports, engagement with our analysts, and it allows you to basically follow the market and educate your team about the market as much as we possibly can. And the second part is traditional consulting work, where we help particular companies with a particular question. And I won't go again in details about this, but we basically help most people in organizations we work with, from the short-term product management towards the longer-term innovation, planning, strategy, etc. And you will see some on the previous slide, some of the companies we work for, mostly the energy world in Europe, technology manufacturers, policy shapers, associations, investors, etc. We do most of our work in Europe for Europe, but we also help a lot of companies outside Europe understand how the European markets are evolving as well. But enough about us. So what's really important to understand in the connector market is, as I said, a few years ago, this market almost didn't exist, but it's quite important now that it's millions of customers and growing to understand what's happening for product companies, for service companies, and even for professional services for these companies, because the market is changing so fast and because a lot of players are entering, exiting the market, new services are being launched, etc. So the way we have thought about designing this discussion was in three different parts. First one being talking really about the market numbers, the size of the markets, where we are today. And the second one being more about what companies have changed, how they are thinking about these markets, what's really designing their strategies. And the third one being about the future growth areas we see, so some of the new things coming up, some short, medium, even longer term things that we see shaping the market. And we will leave some of the time at the end for Q&As. One final thing to add is we are being asked a lot about how we collect our data in this service. Well, basically, as I said, we've been researching the topic for over 10 years now, and we've been talking with pretty much everyone in the market every year or every few months. We have a very experienced team, and we can understand how this market is going. And we are refining all this data in collaborations with companies in the market. So the more the time passes, the more accurate our data gets. And it's very specific data that you can access from sales of particular products by country, by company, by route to market, etc., which allows us then to do this proper analysis that you will see going forward. So I'll hand over to Matti and Evita for the first part. And again, as I said, if you want to ask questions, feel free to do that on the software.
So we're going to start with looking at the size of the market and see how the market has grown in 2018. So we estimate that until 2018, as you also see on the graph, the connected climate controls market has grown to over 5 million households. We've seen a relatively stable growth since last year, and we basically, as the graph shows, this includes connected climate controls, but not only smart thermostats and connected TRVs. Another very interesting part of this market is connected controls for electric heating, for example, heat pumps for air conditioning or for hot water tanks. And this is a part of this market that we see picking up all over Europe. If we look at now the market in Europe country by country, we see that the penetration of connected climate controls is steadily growing all over Europe. There's no surprise that still UK, Netherlands, and Germany hold the majority of the installed base, almost 80%. In each of these countries, the installed base for connected climate controls is almost to 1 million households. So it's a big part of this market. But we also see other countries growing. Most notably, we have France and Belgium, where we see as two of the markets with the highest growth rate, specifically for smart thermostats. But also in general, France, it's a very interesting country for what we've talked earlier for connected controls for electric heating. So connected controls for electric heating is a very small market today, but France is the most interesting country for this. It holds almost 50% of the market at the moment. And Belgium is a very dynamic market. We see it growing, and it's increasingly becoming part of our research.
Yeah, to add to this, Vita, the interesting thing about Europe as a whole, especially if you're not from Europe, is that a lot of the energy companies or heating companies are active in several countries, if not all the countries across Europe. And the learnings they get from for example, from the UK, Netherlands, or Germany can be to some degree replicated technologically, but also position-wise to customers to other countries. And because these markets are maturing, we see that other markets can benefit from that. Of course, there is a lot of technology issues to solve. There is a lot of differences between customers, but this really benefits for the other markets. So we see the spread through Europe continuing going forward, and particularly in Eastern Europe, where we see there is some potential. So that's something we are going to look at in the coming years.
Yeah, and we also kind of pick up on that. At the end of last year, so end of 2018, we conducted some online customer research across the key European markets. So this was specific customer research focused on the topic of connected heating controls, and also explored topics like remote boiler diagnostics. And one of the things we asked, for example, on that was people's likelihood to purchase connected heating controls in the future. So in this graph, you can see the different countries on the axis, and we presented them with a price of €200 to get installed smart thermostat. And we asked them on how likely they would be to acquire such a product within the next 12 months. And it's important to note that all the respondents in this survey were homeowners, so they're kind of the most likely adopters of smart heating control. So they have, for instance, this doesn't include anyone with a rental property who might have issues installing such a product. And in the graph, we can see that it's actually quite interesting that Italy and Germany kind of emerge as the most positive about smart heating controls, and they were kind of most positive about the products overall across the range of questions we asked. And this is in a way quite interesting that when we look at the graph, the countries where we have the least people saying that they're interested in the products are the ones where the adoption is the highest. And I think there's sort of notably UK and the Netherlands. And I think this is mostly for two reasons. So one reason is that in the UK and Netherlands, a lot of the early adopters and people who kind of on the top end of being tech enthusiasts and then wanting these products, they've already acquired these products. So when we look at the Netherlands, it's, we're well over 10% of boiler owners who have a boiler, they already have a smart thermostat with it. So the kind of the addressable market in that sense has already shrunk a bit. And I think also partly it is that in these countries like the UK and the Netherlands, there has been so many offerings around that loads of the people have already maybe made the decision of not purchasing one. Whereas in let's say a country like Italy, there's really not that many very appealing commercial propositions out there. So it might be that also maybe the more advanced countries are also a bit more skeptical about how they think about these products. It's quite an interesting find, but clearly still shows that the addressable market is very big, that that's still out there. And what was quite interesting that when we included questions around remote boiler monitoring, there was over 50% of people who said they would be, as part of their smart thermostat offering, they would be willing to pay a monthly fee for having their boiler monitored and ensuring that they would get notified of any potential issues with the heating system. So actually, I think that was quite an interesting finding of showing how willing people would be to pay for additional services that they see value in. We also asked for a lot of other more details around the topic of remote diagnostics, and we recently published a really big in-depth report looking at this and include some of the findings from this customer research. But I think this highlights kind of one of the biggest trends we're seeing in the whole connected home market, which is around the push and move towards subscription-based revenue and subscription services. And when we talk about remote boiler diagnostics, one example of someone trying to recently launch a solution on this is QB and Eneco. So they launched, as part of their app, they launched a feature called Boiler Checker. And this is a feature where you can enter a bit of information about your boiler. Basically, you enter the information about what's the boiler make, model, and then Eneco and QB, they will start monitoring your boiler and let you know if there's any issues with your boiler. QB has overall, and Eneco, they've been the front runner of having a subscription model. So from the very start, all the smart features are behind a €4.50 subscription per month. And this boiler checker is in a way to provide these customers with additional value-added services that kind of keeps them paying for the service. But also for Eneco, this is a way that they could potentially then use the boiler monitoring to, let's say, expand and sell more boiler cover, which is, for instance, a key model that British Gas uses in the UK. Another example of where kind of we've seen the move to subscription is what Tado did towards the end of 2018, where they moved basically a previously free feature of having geofencing or controlling the heating system automatically based on the geolocation of your phone. And moving this feature in the latest version of their gateway, moving this behind a paywall effectively, and now charging customers £3 per month for the feature they call now Auto Assist. And of course, for some of the existing customers, they were able to keep the old feature, but for new customers, it's now £3 per month. And what's been quite positive about this is the reaction this has got in the market, and I think Tado has been very positive about how this feature has been received. And it goes to show that also what's in line with our customer research, that this kind of £2 to £3 or euros per month kind of fee is where the willingness to pay often is for these kind of value-added services. And I think we're going to see this kind of model a lot more moving forward. And maybe as a kind of final example then of going quite a bit further than this is what we're seeing with Hive moving on to a totally new area of assisted living and actually offering quite a bit more expensive service around assisted living and elderly care and that kind of peace of mind side of things, where they're using various smart home sensors to effectively allow people to monitor and keep on track of the health of their elderly parents, for instance, and make sure that everything's fine and get that peace of mind. And I think this is also a big area that we're seeing a lot of interest and expansion and companies looking more towards subscription revenue through assisted living.
Matthew, we've got a few questions related to the data and from the customer research we did, particularly around the detailed data per country, per types of service. So to answer these questions, yes, all the details is available. If your company is a subscriber of the service, then you will be able to access all the data, all the analysis linked to this, and we can get into quite some granular analysis for that. So if you are subscribers, yes. If you are not, happy to have a chat with you after that webinar as well if you want to know more about this.
Yeah, and for instance, for the remote diagnostics, we do have a country by country breakdown of what people are willing to pay, and actually that's quite interesting because the differences are very significant by country. How much this varies, because of course, you know, something like boiler monitoring is very much linked to boiler cover or boiler maintenance packages, and these are often very different prices in different countries. So also kind of that is reflected in the willingness to pay for boiler monitoring, for instance. Yeah, and to kind of move on and hand over to Vita.
Yes, so related to what Mike was talking about, the subscription services, we have looked in this case, what is the value of the connected home market? So how much have customers spent in 2018 in connected home products? And this includes connected climate controls, lights, plugs, and subscription services like remote diagnostics and other multi-product subscriptions. So as you'll see from this pie chart, subscriptions make up only 11% still from the customer spend. And this includes examples that similar to what Matti described earlier, but also something like subscriptions on product bundles, like what Deutsche Telekom does in Germany, where it combines for its Magenta smart home bundle products from both security but also energy products. But still, the biggest part of the pie, almost 80%, is what customers spend in actual purchases of products. So this is just buying the simple product. And this is, as I said, does not include smart speakers. But if we include smart speakers in this pie chart, then the overall customer spend goes from almost 615 million to adding almost 1 billion on top of that for smart speakers. So that shows the size of the smart speakers market compared to the rest of connected home products. And to put things into perspective for smart speakers, so 2018 was the year where we saw even more expansion of smart speakers from Amazon and Google to all the major European markets. We saw most recently Google Home launching in Norway, Sweden, Denmark. And it's the first year where we see smart speaker market surpassing the climate controls market. And to put things into more perspective, the smart speaker market in 2018 was almost twice as large as all the other connected home energy products combined. So it's a market that is moving very, very fast. It's moving on its own. It does not depend on the rest of the connected home products. And we do expect it to be growing in the next years as well. In terms of who holds the biggest share, we still think that Amazon holds its early market lead. It still has the biggest share over Google Home and Apple, but we expect this to maybe change in the next few years, especially since Google Home has been very aggressive in launching new languages, and it has been ahead on this from Amazon.
Yeah, and one thing we have said in the past as well, and that's quite common knowledge now, is that the smart speaker market has had a huge positive impact on the rest of the device markets, particularly linked to home automation and remote control. And so that was the first trend linked to smart speakers, but now Amazon and Google are putting, especially Amazon, are putting the voice capability within devices as well. And we are hearing that this has a huge positive impact on sales directly. So you don't even need to buy a smart speaker anymore. There is a microphone and a small speaker in most devices being sold in the market. And customers really understand quickly this proposition. The other thing is Google Home and Amazon are really aggressive at selling for or discounting the products, even giving it for free in the case of Google Home, for example, bundling the Google Home Mini with the Spotify family account. So you can see that the tech giants are pushing for this because they really see that they can potentially gather a lot of data, offer new services. But this has a really positive impact for anyone else in the market. And we expect the growth of the smart speaker market to help the other side of the market continue growing as well. So that's really interesting to follow.
And on one of the questions, just a clarification on the country flags on the left there. They're kind of the new launches we saw around 2018, where these companies have launched. So this data also includes the largest markets of Germany and the UK as well. So the stuff on the right is just kind of the new expanded markets that Amazon and Google have moved to.
Exactly.
Yeah, to move on to the kind of the next section of the webinar. So in here we want to cover a bit more examples of highlighting some of the trends that we've seen around subscriptions and so forth, and go a bit more at looking at individual companies and the kind of key developments we've seen from leading players in 2018. And it's always interesting to talk about Centrica and Hive and what they've been doing, because they've been, of course, investing heavily for a number of years now on the connected home space, and they've established a very broad range of a connected home product portfolio, from thermostats to lighting, sensors, plugs, cameras, leak detectors. So having a full range of products. Now they just recently also introduced their internet connected TRVs in the UK to kind of round out the heating side of things. And then also on the other side of things, they have been looking at several ways of getting additional recurring revenue streams. So one thing we already talked about is the boiler monitoring, so the Boiler IQ proposition. They also have the leak plan, and they've now launched, as I mentioned, the assisted living, but also they have a kind of a security proposition as well. So, and then on the international expansion side of things, working with ENI in Italy. So quite a lot of areas there where they're looking to gather additional revenue to recurring revenue to kind of help with the profitability of their business. But to show really the overall challenge that this market is still facing is that when we look at the kind of gross revenues and the operating profit of the Centrica's connected home business, for 2018, we saw that their revenues went up by over 50%. Meanwhile, that only resulted in the operating losses going down by roughly 10%. So only around £10 million reduction in their operating losses. So still kind of goes to show the problem we were kind of highlighting in the earlier slide with the pie chart of what's to spend in individual product purchases and what's to spend in kind of recurring services and recurring revenue. And for the case of Centrica and Hive, of course, every product they add to their portfolio also adds to the cost of maintaining and running the system. So kind of indefinite expansion of just adding new products and selling these products for a one-off fee is really not that sustainable of a business model for most companies. And that's really kind of what this is highlighting, and kind of highlights the reasons why there is such a push for subscription services.
There is a question regarding the market shares between utilities or energy companies versus other channels. That's not something I think we are going to cover in this webinar, but basically all the data we have gathered helps you make the breakdown between different channels. In our analysis, we divide this between 4 main categories. Of course, the energy suppliers, the retailers, where customers buy online or directly in shops. We also divide it by, let's say, the heating sector, where customers buy from installers, who buy from wholesalers, who buy from manufacturers, and then the telecom industry. Roughly right now, we are in Europe about a third utilities, a third heating channels, and a third retail. But this number depends a lot on the country you're looking at. And it's really important to understand the specifics of each market and the extent to which utilities are committed to these markets, or the boiler manufacturers are already well ahead with their product development, has a huge impact on how the market shares between channels is evolving, basically.
Yeah, and I think overall we've seen a bit of a decline on the energy supplier shares with less success from other players outside the leading players of Eneco and Centrica, and also the emergence of self-installed products and the ease of installation being a kind of a key criteria for products, let's say lighting or connected TRVs, is also much more suitable to retail, and a lot of that is growth in the retail channels. But as Arthur said, there's a really big variance between countries. Then continuing with the kind of the examples of what companies are doing in kind of moving towards looking for additional revenue streams and justifying those subscription costs. Looking at Eneco and QB, they have the Tune thermostat around over 400,000 households, and they're looking to really round out that portfolio. They included things that are in the roadmap, is including, of course, trying to take advantage of the emerging opportunity for electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging, and potentially also linking storage with this. This is not a feature they yet have really linked directly with the QB products, but this is something that they publicly stated it's in their roadmap and plans for 2019. What they have already launched we already spoken about the boiler checker around remote monitoring, but also what they call waste checker, which is trying to make use of the smart meter data that QB and Tune are gathering, and trying to identify, for instance, appliances that might be wasting energy, or let's say identify an inefficient fridge, or help you reduce standby consumption. And this is also a feature that is included with the Tune subscription. In addition, of course, Eneco has been quite active and successful in expanding to new markets via partnerships. So they're working with Repsol, formerly Viesco in Spain, and Engie in Belgium. So looking to kind of create that B2B revenue from the platform. They've also have launched around a year ago a partnership with a local Dutch insurance company called Interpolis, which will include is basically a product made for them, which is a security camera, connected security camera. And of course, ideally in the future, the plan would be then to try more actively bundle this with potentially discounts with insurance policies and so forth. They've also worked a fair bit with companies like Olisto, who try and integrate different products and link experiences with, let's say, the QB platform being linked to, let's say, connected lighting from Philips and these kind of activities. And still at the core of their model is that they're bundling the smart thermostat with a 4-year electricity and gas contract. So really focusing on keeping customers on their electricity retail tariffs and keeping those gas and electricity customers, and also helping with retention and kind of the net promoter score side of things. So combining all of this, they're really looking to build those revenue streams to kind of justify the investment and leverage the massive install base they already have acquired.
And now talking about, we've been talking about Centrica and Eneco every year, basically, because they have been really leading with innovation and propositions to customers. But there are two of some of the major things that happened that we'll talk about now is the acquisition of Netatmo by Legrand and the spin-off of Honeywell and Resideo. But the Legrand business is quite interesting to think about for those who don't really know this. Legrand is a giant electricity OEM manufacturer, and with an annual revenue of around 6 billion. And they have been active in the smart home market for decades, but mostly the luxury smart home, quite exclusive to some people. And they have acquired Netatmo last year, in our estimations for somewhere around 9 figures. But the reason being is Netatmo is also a French company, but has the capability of using connectivity to enable other existing products to be connected, basically. So in a roadmap development plan for a company like Legrand, who has a lot of switches, a lot of sockets, a lot of other electricity-related products, it's really interesting to have someone specializing in connecting products. So here you see 2 examples of product lines: the switch and sockets, and a partnership with Bibendorf, who is a big electric shutter manufacturer in France. And basically, having Netatmo in the company allows them to connect these products who were not connected in the past, and that can allow them to get a huge competitive advantage or compete with existing companies in the space. So this is a really interesting acquisition, and we think that will dynamize the market a lot. You can see at the bottom of the slide, this is what Netatmo is showing on its website, and the ambition of that company is really to enable, let's say, a B2B partnerships to create connectivity for certain products. While Netatmo has been, let's say, a really good brand, really good at B2C and retail, the objective for growth was always around B2B, and that's what's really interesting to see around here. So we do see that as a really interesting acquisition, and we do expect the market to be accelerating thanks to this sort of moves. On the other hand, most of you probably know Honeywell. Honeywell is a giant manufacturer in lots of industries, but a giant company means you can't do everything you could do in an industry like the Connect Home, which is quite dynamic. So Honeywell decided to take around 10% of the company and spinning it off to something called Resideo, which is basically the global connected home business for Honeywell. And within this, the numbers are shown here, but some impressive things like 13,000 people, 150 million households, etc. So that's not a small business, but that's also not a startup compared to all the other companies you will see appearing on the right-hand side. Honeywell has been part of the heating control ecosystem for decades now, and while other startups on the right of the slides will have had to learn how to build products, how to go through various channels, and really learn about the business. Resideo and Honeywell have the advantage of having worked with most of the wholesalers in the countries they're active in, of being known by the installers, and being a known brand for the customers, what's really trusted. And as a result, Matt, if you could click once or twice, you will see a lot of the products that Resideo and Honeywell have in the market connected. And the key thing, I think, to me is that it's a global business, and therefore it gives you some sort of scale in terms of connectivity, platform, and etc. But it's also in Europe, it has the size to really focus on particular channels, and where we think this is a big advantage for Resideo. And you see the brands on the right hand side here are probably some of the most selling products in Europe for smart thermostats and ITRVs, and Honeywell is part of this group of highest selling products. And so this is why it's really interesting. We do think that spinning off such a business will help them focus on what's really important for the connected home and be potentially a leading manufacturer in the future. And yeah, as I said, here you can see some of the verticals that Honeywell Home is part of. So it's not only just about heating control, it's about everything linked to air quality, safety, etc. So it's more than just a startup focusing on a few products. It's really a solid global business with a platform behind to push forward some services and products.
Yeah, and then moving on to kind of on the more kind of the final section of the webinar is around what we're seeing as the kind of the three key future growth areas of the connected home business. We kind of alluded to many of these in the presentation already, but really they are linked to creating those kind of the common thing is around creating recurring revenue from these connected devices. So that's really the kind of the thread that holds it all together. And one of the examples which we're seeing really as on the heating side of things as probably the most exciting opportunity that the industry is having is around remote boiler monitoring or remote boiler diagnostics. So on the screen there, you can see three examples. I guess the British Gas Boiler IQ example is the most well known, which is already in well over 100,000 households in the UK. And this is currently done in partnership with Bosch, where Bosch provides the connectivity to the boilers and the data from the boilers. And for customers, this proposition is only available if you have a boiler cover, boiler insurance package from British Gas, and then it's an additional £3 on top of that package. So this means that you're looking at a minimum of around £11 to £15 as a minimum for the whole boiler cover and the boiler remote monitoring. And for British Gas, of course, the benefits are really around, there's both around the customer experience and making sure that if there is an issue, you can get it sorted as quickly as possible, as easily as possible. But then for British Gas, there's also a lot of benefits around managing their field force. And we've done a lot of research on this topic, and we have a report where we specifically look at what the potential cost savings could be. But then moving on to kind of the Dutch market, there's a very interesting example of what Venstra is doing, which is a national maintenance company owned by Nuon, so the Vattenfall group. And in there, they have in the Netherlands, it's fairly common to have rental boilers. So that's maybe around roughly 10% of the market have boilers that they rent. And what Venstra has decided is that as they're renting boilers, they effectively have an asset they need to manage, and they've decided that they want those assets to be connected so they can better monitor it and make sure that it's up and running. And if they need to do any maintenance or fixes on it, that they can do this as cost effectively as possible. So now in all of the rental boilers, this connectivity is included as a standard. And of course, this is an interesting opportunity for some of the boiler manufacturers, because in a way, if you're not able to provide this data to Venstra, then Venstra will choose another supplier to use for these rental boilers. So in a way, this is forcing a bit the boiler manufacturers' hands off, well, we need to be able to share data, or otherwise this big company won't necessarily be selling our boilers, or in this case, buying them for the rental proposition. And then on the right-hand side, we have NG Home Services, which is the largest service provider in France. And they are looking to take it maybe a bit further than this and really create a totally new business model using remote diagnostics. So they in France have launched a boiler proposition, which is 63 euros a month for a kind of fully inclusive, the boiler and then the servicing and remote diagnostics comes as part of that package. And they're working interestingly with several partners. So they're working with a boiler manufacturer called Cosmogas, and then with Honeywell, who then provides them with the remote boiler diagnostics platform and data capabilities. So I think this is an area where we'll see a lot of growth. And interesting, I think the dynamics quite interesting is that the big service providers will really be trying to push this market forward, because there's so many significant operational benefits that having a connected portfolio of maintenance contracts would provide them with. And this is really, I think, going to push the market forward, but also create interesting situations where partnership will have to be formed to get access to this data.
Another area where we see the connected home potentially be a trigger for growth is the way the home will change and how the electricity flows in the home will change. So today, in most homes, you have appliances, heating and cooling, and meter points. In tomorrow's home, you will see a lot of new things appearing, from obviously this sort of the central connected device controls. You will have maybe solar PV batteries coming in. You will have an electric vehicle perhaps with a charge point. You will have more and more smart meters for both electricity and gas. And you will also have some signals coming from the energy supplier or the grid with time of use tariffs or potential flexibility signals, etc. So this is really the home of the future. This might not happen within the next 3-4 years. This is more a mid-long-term vision. But basically, a lot of the companies are seeing that vision and trying to execute it while keeping in mind how to generate as much value as possible for their business. And to do this, you need to have the customer relationship. You need to be as closely as possible to the customer. And if you look at the 3 main loads that you can optimize or do flexibility with, these are obviously the electric vehicle. Obviously, that's some future market. This market is not really big yet, but it's going to be. There is the PV and the battery. Again, it's quite niche today. It's going to grow organically, but some countries it might not grow as fast as others. And then you have this we call the basement, or the appliances, where you have electric heating, cooling, appliances, etc. This part of the market is already existing. It's already in the homes of people, and this is where controlling that load can be really effective for starting to be at the center of managing the energy flows in the home. So a lot of companies are betting on starting with this. And to do this, obviously, the connected home, particularly connected climate controls, can play a huge role in controlling that flexibility. So in the next few slides, we'll see some examples of companies thinking about the connected home as an entry point towards doing more of this home energy management thing.
Yeah, and to go through some of those examples, it's definitely just not us talking about here about this big vision. It's really big and significant companies putting a lot of money behind this. And I think one of the most interesting ones is an oil giant of Shell really moving aggressively to the energy area, and also kind of having this vision of being at the middle of this transition towards electrical heating, electrical storage, electrical transport, and really moving from the oil petroleum-based industry to controlling that electricity side of thing. And they've been talking about investing $1 to $2 billion every year in new energy. So that is huge sums of money. And some of the examples already in Europe include the acquisition of Sonnen, which is the leading storage manufacturer, and also especially it's pretty big in the German storage market. Examples on the EV side includes Greenlots and New Motion, so really kind of going after the opportunity for the electrical transport move. And then also another example would be Lime Jump from UK, which is a DSR aggregator, so on the demand side response area. So really bringing together already there some of the really big loads around storage, EVs, and then the demand response kind of management of those. And then also interestingly, for instance, in the UK, they've acquired First Utility, which is an energy supplier. So then you can see Shell really trying to bring all these pieces. Of course, the challenge for them remains that while you can throw a lot of money acquiring these companies, is how do you bring this all together and combine this into an offering where you can actually connect all those loads and be able to provide a sensible customer proposition out of this as well. So I'm seeing a big challenge for Shell there as well, but they're really building in the capabilities in-house now for that. And of course, another kind of the leaders of the connected home is Centrica. They also have a small team specifically looking at home energy management, and they've done a fair bit of investments around companies like Greencom, who are really a platform for managing the different different connected loads that you would have in your home. Also, UK-based startup called Mixergy, which is focusing on connected hot water tanks. And then there's loads of other examples like Restore and Drives on the EV side of things. And for Centrica, it's quite interesting in a way. This business is still kind of showing how we're still in the fairly early stages of it. It's not very directly linked yet with the Hive platform, because it's still about identifying which loads would be the best to connect and where we can get those volumes for those loads. And I think eventually, of course, there's a big opportunity for Centrica to potentially use the Hive platform or use at least kind of the Hive customer base as a route to market for this, which is something a lot of the other companies might not have yet. And then from other kind of European energy supply giant is E.ON, which is really working with Microsoft for providing solutions for the home energy management area. And this is really showing as an example of a player like Microsoft moving on to this, how there is these big tech giants as well interested in understanding how big the opportunity potentially is, and also how complicated it might be to connect all the various different loads. So I think this is an area where we'll definitely see loads more of all of these acquisitions, investments, and partnerships emerging to actually develop a compelling customer proposition eventually.
And we had a question about whether Centrica believes Hive will turn profitable at some point. I think they are thinking about the bigger picture than just their Connectome business and their energy management business. I think the overall vision is to have everything including together, and the Hive part is really something that will enable them to be even better at doing home energy management in the future. So I'm sure they believe, and they are putting pressure on the Hive team to generate more profits, or at least generate some profits. But the bigger picture is where they see the market going. They have spent already £500 million almost in this space. So they see that as the future of their business. And even if losing money now is maybe not the best ideal thing, they believe that this will be the way that they are making money in the next 5-10 years maybe. So hard to answer the question, but this is the way they see the market going.
Yeah, and I think as well it's a big challenge for how the home energy management market will emerge is around kind of the battle for the customer and what will be the route to market. Will the home energy management solution, will that be bought from your connected home supplier, which might be Hive, or will it be through your solar PV storage installations, or will it be in companion with your acquiring your first electric vehicle? So I think that's also what these companies are eyeing for, that they need to have that route into market where they can make sure that they can secure the customer, because once the customer is secured, and it might be quite hard move then kind of change from one home energy management supplier to another.
And finally, the last point to talk about here, the changes in the way the connector market is evolving. There is a lot of big trends towards home services and energy services marketplaces, which are basically defined by a single place where you can buy some sort of service, either heating, repair, or maintenance, even towards painting, gardening, doing small DIY in your home, etc. And these services are basically an app where you need to say whatever you want to do. You get an instant quote, and then you get someone sent to your house to do the work. A lot of the companies like Centrica, like EDF, and more have invested in this and have big ambitions towards creating these sort of marketplaces, because they want their customers to come to them as something else than just energy. And this will be linked to then offering more services, offering potentially cross-selling other stuff, etc. The key point for the connector market is that this could become a new channel, a new route to market for, let's say, smart thermostats. Because if you, for example, buy your boiler online, which is happening more and more, these companies are offering you to add a smart thermostat on top of this. And when you pay 3,000 euros for a boiler, 200 euro smart thermostat doesn't sound like such a big investment anymore. Equally, when you have someone in your home offering you services, we have found, and these companies have found, that it's a much more trusted person to potentially sell you connected devices. And one of the things that these companies are worried of worried about is the emergence of companies like Amazon in this space. So Amazon has been offering home services in the US for quite some time, and also the whole piece around consulting you for smart home and helping you understand what's best for your home, and then selling you the devices and selling them for you. And now Amazon has launched Amazon Home Services in the UK. We know other companies are looking at the same space, and lots of things could be happening. But the fact that Amazon is such a trusted brand, a lot of people are using Amazon as the marketplace, and this is the place where you get your services. This could have a huge impact on how customers are going to buy connected home devices in the future. And following how these markets are evolving will be really critical to not miss out on opportunities, but also understand where threats are coming from. Because as a customer, I might be more interested in going through Amazon rather than my energy companies or my heating company or my installer. So again, something we're constantly looking at, and we want to help you understand better so that you can take the opportunities with you. We had left some time for Q&As, but we have answered to quite some questions through the webinar. So I think we promised 45 minutes and we're already 5 minutes over. So I think we will leave the remainder of the questions for now and get back to you after the webinar individually, if that's okay with you. Just a few words about what we provide to you. So everything we've discussed here comes from a few reports in our Connected Home subscription service, including the annual state of the market, which also includes a big database of product sales by country, by channel, by company, etc. We have done a lot of customer research on European homeowners for different products and services. We are currently starting a study on home energy management specifically, looking at the opportunities across Europe. We obviously have other services related to how to engage customers digitally, specifically energy customers, and how you can use, for example, speakers or chatbots or other means to help your customers be better engaged and maybe spend more with you as well. So if you are interested in hearing more about this, feel free to let us know. And a bit of news on our side. We've just completed the New Energy Summit a few weeks ago in Amsterdam. Some of you were there, so thanks for coming. There is a summary of the summit available online. But there is a new summit as well, specifically on the changes in the heating markets. And that will be in London in September. So if you want to register, you have a link here. And for those who haven't heard the podcast yet, we have done a dozen episodes on this. This is available on all the channels like Spotify and Apple. So talking new energy is what we are doing, and we are talking about all the topics, including obviously the connector market, but beyond that, and all the topics like flexibility, home energy management, strategies of big utilities and heating companies. So there will be more and more episodes coming in, and we hope that you enjoy listening to them. And yeah, finally, it's time for me to thank you all for taking the time to come here for 1 hour on our webinar. We appreciate this. We're really excited to share the findings with you on our studies. As we said before, the slides, you can request the slides if you want. We can send it to you by PDF. And we will also put the recording of this webinar on YouTube. We will send the link to you, and you can be able to watch it again or share it with colleagues if you want. And if you have more questions, as usual, we are very happy to engage with you, talk about the market, debate, discuss, etc. So always happy to have these discussions with you. And finally, I would like to thank Matti and Evita in the cold, rainy Edinburgh for organizing this great webinar. Thank you, guys, and thank you, everyone, and speak to you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.